The car you've been driving for 3 years? I never sold it to you. And those diamond earrings you're wearing in every photo? Still mine. Funny how ownership works when you actually read the paperwork. You could hear the silence through the screen. I watched my daughter-in-law's face drain of color through the video call. Her perfectly manicured fingers frozen mid-gesture. She'd just spent 20 minutes explaining to her online followers why I was no longer welcome at family gatherings. Too demanding, she'd said. Too controlling. Always bringing up the past. Well, Amanda, let me bring up something from the present. The deed to your boutique? Take a closer look at whose name is on it. My name is Helen Cartwright. I'm 74 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought being generous meant staying silent. I was wrong. Let me tell you how a woman can be erased from her own life story, one small theft at a time. It started with a celebration, as these things often do. My daughter-in-law Amanda was opening her second clothing boutique, a trendy little shop in the arts district that sold overpriced scarves to women who wanted to feel bohemian without the actual struggle. She'd invited the whole family for the grand opening, and I'd driven 2 hours from my retirement community to be there. "Helen," she'd called out, air kissing both my cheeks, while her eyes scanned the room for more important guests. No mom anymore. That had stopped about a year ago, right around the time her social media following hit 50,000. I'd brought a check for $5,000, my standard gift for major family milestones. Amanda had pocketed it without looking, already turning to greet a local influencer who'd wandered in. The boutique was lovely, I had to admit. Exposed brick walls, vintage mirrors, that studied casualness that only comes from spending a fortune to look effortless. Amanda floated through the space like she owned it, which, according to the framed business license on the wall, she did. Except she didn't. Not entirely. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My son Thomas stood near the back, looking uncomfortable in the slim-fit blazer Amanda had bought him. At 45, he'd developed the slightly hunched posture of a man who spent too many years trying to make himself smaller to accommodate someone else's largeness. "Great turnout," he said when I joined him, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "It is. Your father would be proud. But pride can be a fragile thing when truth starts cracking the surface." Something flickered across his face. Would he? Before I could ask what he meant, Amanda materialized beside us, her smile bright and sharp as a knife. "Thomas, I need you to take photos for my Instagram. The lighting is perfect right now." He went without argument, and I watched my son become a prop in his wife's carefully curated life. 3 days after the grand opening, Thomas called. His voice had that careful quality he'd developed since marrying Amanda, like he was always testing the ice before stepping forward. That tone in his voice, I'd heard it before, right before bad news. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something Amanda posted." "What now?" I asked, settling into my kitchen chair with a sense of foreboding. She did this family gratitude post. Very sweet, really. She thanked everyone who'd supported her journey. I waited. Thomas had learned his wife's technique of soft landings before hard falls. "You weren't mentioned. Some people commented asking about you, and she said..." His voice dropped. "She said some family members give support, and others just give strings attached." Strings attached. As if wanting acknowledgement for funding someone's dream was manipulative rather than reasonable. "I see," I said quietly. I told her it wasn't right. "But she said you'd understand it was just social media, not serious. She's just building her brand." My son, defending his wife's cruelty by minimizing it. I recognized the pattern. I'd seen it growing worse over their 12-year marriage, this gradual diminishment of his voice, his needs, his mother. After I hung up, I did something I'd never done before. I created a fake social media account to see what my daughter-in-law was really saying about me. What I found made me understand exactly what Thomas meant by building her brand. Amanda had constructed an entire mythology around her success. Bootstrapping entrepreneur, self-made businesswoman, overcame adversity and family interference to build her empire. The family interference was apparently me, though she never used my name. Just references to difficult in-laws who couldn't understand modern business, and older generation relatives who wanted control in exchange for help. I scrolled back through 2 years of posts. There I was, erased from every family photo she'd posted or relegated to the far edge, cropped out in the final version. There were posts about the generous investor who'd believed in her first boutique, but no mention that the investor was me. Posts about overcoming financial obstacles, with no reference to the $20,000 I'd lent her when the bank rejected her loan. Lent, not gave. There was paperwork. I'm old, not stupid, but what disturbed me most were the posts about Thomas, about how lucky she was to have a supportive husband who understood her vision, about how some men feel threatened by successful wives, but not hers, about how she'd upgraded her life by marrying someone who let her shine. The comments on these posts made my stomach turn. You trained him well. My husband could never. He knows his place, LOL. My son had become a joke to his wife's followers. The accommodating husband who knew his place. I spent that evening in my study, surrounded by file folders I hadn't opened in years. My late husband, Martin, had been meticulous about documentation. Every loan, every investment, every handshake deal was backed up with signatures and witnesses. Here was the promissory note for Amanda's first boutique loan, $20,000 at 0 interest, to be repaid when the business became profitable. That was 4 years ago. The shop, according to her social media, was thriving beyond my wildest dreams. Here was the car title for the Mercedes I'd transferred to her 3 years ago, on the condition that she'd pay me the remaining $15,000 she owed me first. I'd let her take the car on good faith, with a written agreement that ownership would transfer once the debt was settled. Here was the insurance policy for my mother's diamond earrings, the ones Amanda wore in every dressed-up photo, captioned as my signature piece. I'd lent them to her for her wedding 8 years ago. She'd never returned them, and here, most interestingly, was the deed to the commercial property her second boutique occupied. The building I'd purchased 12 years ago as an investment property. The building Amanda was operating out of under a lease agreement that required quarterly rent payments. I pulled out my bank statements. No rent payments in 14 months. My financial advisor, Janet Chen, is a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who doesn't believe in soft landings. Helen, you've been subsidizing your daughter-in-law's lifestyle to the tune of approximately $67,000 over the past 5 years, she said, her fingers flying across her calculator. That's not counting the unpaid rent on the commercial property. I was helping family, helping my son's marriage. You were being used. Janet pushed her glasses up her nose. Let me be very clear. Amanda has documented income from her boutiques that should have allowed her to repay you years ago. She's chosen not to. It's amazing how fast denial evaporates when someone names it for you. Maybe they're struggling more than they let on. Janet turned her laptop around. This is their joint tax return from last year. Amanda cleared $90,000 in profit between both stores. Thomas makes $65,000 as an accountant. They're bringing in $155,000 a year. They can afford to pay you back. She's choosing not to. The numbers sat between us like a third person in the room. What about Thomas? Does he know about the debts? Janet's expression softened. That's what you need to find out. Because either he knows and is complicit, or he doesn't know and is being kept in the dark about his own finances. Neither option is good. I started small. Just a text to Thomas. Can you come by this weekend? Just you. I need to discuss something important. Those 2 words, just you, said more than the whole message. He showed up Saturday morning, looking exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. When I hugged him, he felt thinner than I remembered. Is everything okay? He asked, settling onto my couch with coffee. That's what I want to ask you. I pulled out the promissory note. Thomas, do you remember when I lent Amanda $20,000 for her first boutique? He nodded slowly. You were incredibly generous. Do you remember the terms? You said not to worry about it, that you wanted to help us get started. I said not to worry about interest or a specific timeline. But there was a promissory note. She was supposed to repay it once the business became profitable. I watched his face carefully. He looked genuinely confused. I didn't know there was a note. Your father witnessed it. It's been 4 years, and the business has been profitable for 3. I've never received a single payment, Thomas set down his coffee carefully, like he was afraid his hands might not be steady. Mom, I handle our personal finances, but Amanda manages everything related to the boutiques. She said she had it all under control. What about the rent on the commercial property? What rent? My heart sank. Thomas, the building her second boutique is in? I own it. We have a lease agreement. $1,500 a month. No. He shook his head. No, she told me you'd given her the space, that you wanted to support her expansion. I wanted to provide affordable rent, not free space. I watched my son process this information, watched the careful architecture of his understanding crumble. How long has she not been paying? 14 months. He did the math in his head. I could see him calculating. That's $21,000, plus the original loan. Mom, that's over $40,000. $67,000 total, including the car and other expenses. Thomas, she's been using my resources to build her brand while telling everyone she's self-made. My son put his face in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear to you. I didn't know. I believe you. Then I did. I could see it in his face, the genuine shock and horror. But I need to know something else. Are you happy? The question seemed to catch him off guard. What? In your marriage. Are you happy? Thomas looked away, and in that averted gaze, I saw the answer he couldn't speak out loud. Silence answers questions, words never could. That evening, Thomas called Amanda from my house. I sat beside him as he asked her about the loan, about the rent, about all the financial obligations she'd been ignoring. I could hear her voice through the phone, sharp and defensive. Are you seriously confronting me about this? With your mother right there? This is exactly why I don't involve her in our business. Amanda, Mom lent us $20,000. You signed a promissory note. That was a gift. She said it was to help us. That's not what the paperwork says. Oh, so now you believe some piece of paper over your own wife? This is what she does, Thomas. She uses money to control people. She's trying to come between us. I watched my son's face harden in a way I'd never seen before. She's asking for money that's owed to her. That's not control. That's basic financial responsibility. I can't believe you're taking her side. There are no sides here. There's just honesty. Did you sign a promissory note or didn't you? A long pause. Yes, but did we agree to pay rent on the boutique property? Another pause. Your mother is hardly hurting for money. That's not the point. Amanda, we make good money. Why haven't we been paying her back? Because I've been building something. I've been creating a legacy for our family. The boutiques are investments in our future, with Mom's money that you haven't repaid. I knew you wouldn't understand. You've never supported my vision. You're just like your mother, always questioning, always doubting. Thomas's voice went very quiet. I've supported everything you've done. I work full-time and then come home and handle all your social media photography. I manage our household while you travel for business trips. I've shrunk myself down to make room for your vision, but I won't defend theft from my own mother. Theft? How dare you? He hung up. Then he turned off his phone and sat in silence for a long moment. I'm sorry, Mom, for all of it. You didn't do anything wrong. I let her treat you this way. I saw the signs and told myself it wasn't that bad, that you'd understand, that keeping the peace was worth more than... His voice broke. I'm ashamed. I put my hand over his. Thomas, you're not responsible for your wife's choices, but you are responsible for your own. He nodded slowly. I need to figure some things out. Over the next week, Thomas did something I'd never expected. He started going through their finances thoroughly. What he found was worse than either of us had imagined. Truth, once invited in, doesn't leave quietly. Amanda had been keeping 2 sets of books. One showed the boutiques barely breaking even, with all profits reinvested into inventory and marketing. This was the version she showed Thomas. The other, hidden in a separate business account Thomas wasn't signatory to, showed the true numbers. The boutiques were making money. Lots of it. Money that was being funneled into personal expenses, luxury purchases, and investments Thomas knew nothing about. "She bought a condo," he told me over coffee in my kitchen, his voice hollow. "In Miami, a vacation rental property, with our business profits that I thought didn't exist." "Did you confront her?" "She said it was a surprise, an investment for our future. She was going to tell me when the time was right." He laughed bitterly. "Everything's always for our future, but I'm never allowed to participate in planning that future." I watched my son reckon with his marriage, with the slow accumulation of small betrayals that had built into something insurmountable. "What are you going to do?" I asked gently. "I don't know yet, but I know I can't keep living like this, like I'm a supporting character in someone else's story." Amanda's response to Thomas's investigation was swift and brutal. She posted on social media about family betrayal, about in-laws who couldn't accept their son's success, about older generations trying to sabotage young entrepreneurs. She never mentioned names, but anyone who knew our family understood who she meant. Several of her followers commented with sympathy and advice about protecting herself from toxic family members. One comment stopped me cold. "You should talk to a lawyer about protecting your business assets if his family is making claims." Amanda had liked the comment, but she'd miscalculated. Because Thomas wasn't just my son anymore. He was her husband, the accountant who now understood exactly how she'd been manipulating their finances. And he was angry. Thomas filed for separation and moved back in with me temporarily. Amanda's response was to lock him out of all business accounts and post about choosing yourself when marriage becomes toxic. The comments were predictable. "You deserve better. Stay strong, Queen. His loss." What her followers didn't know was that Thomas had copied every financial document before she could hide them. That he'd discovered not just the unpaid debts to me, but systematic misrepresentation of their marital finances. I did something then that I'd been putting off. I called a lawyer. Richard Porter was in his 60s, with the patient demeanor of someone who'd seen every flavor of family drama. He reviewed my documents with careful attention. "Mrs. Cartwright, you have a very strong case. The promissory note is clear, the lease agreement is documented, and the car title was never properly transferred. Legally, you're entitled to full repayment and return of property." "What about Thomas? He's still married to her." "That complicates things, but not insurmountably. Your agreements were with Amanda personally, not with them as a married couple. You can pursue claims against her without involving Thomas's assets." Over the next hour, we discussed options. I could send a formal demand letter for repayment of all debts and return of property. If Amanda didn't comply, I could file civil suits for breach of contract and return of property. "There's one more thing," Richard said, pulling out a legal pad. "Your son mentioned business accounts his wife kept hidden. If she's been using business revenue for personal expenses while not paying legitimate business debts, like the rent she owes you, that's potential fraud. I don't want to destroy her. I just want what's owed to me. Sometimes those are the same thing." The demand letter was delivered by certified mail, requiring Amanda's signature. She responded by posting a tear-filled video on social media about elder abuse. "Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you most are the ones who hurt you worst," she said, dabbing at her eyes. "My husband's mother is threatening legal action against me because I won't let her control my business. She's using money as a weapon to drive us apart, and it's working." The comments were sympathetic. Many of her followers shared their own stories of difficult in-laws. A few pointed out that if I was owed money, asking for it back wasn't abuse. Amanda deleted those comments. But then something unexpected happened. One of Amanda's former employees posted a comment. "I worked at the first boutique for 2 years. Helen Cartwright funded that business and was never paid back. Amanda is lying." The truth has a funny way of trending. The comment gained traction before Amanda could delete it. Other former employees chimed in. People who'd seen the lease agreements, who'd witnessed conversations about the loan, who knew the truth behind Amanda's self-made story. Amanda's carefully constructed narrative was crumbling in real time. She responded by doubling down, posting more content about family betrayal and financial abuse. But now, more people were questioning her story. Screenshots of my legal documents started circulating. Thomas had shared them with mutual friends who were tired of Amanda's manipulation. The tide was turning. Thomas filed for divorce 3 weeks after moving out. Amanda's response was predictable. More social media posts about betrayal, about choosing yourself, about rising from the ashes. But privately, she reached out to me. A text message at 2 a.m. "We need to talk, please." Guilt doesn't reach out. Fear does. We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop neither of us frequented. Amanda looked different without the Instagram filters, older and more tired. "I'll pay you back," she said immediately. "All of it. I just need time." "You've had years." I was building something. I was trying to create security for us, for Thomas. "You don't understand what it's like to come from nothing and have to fight for everything." "Amanda, I grew up during a recession with parents who worked 3 jobs between them. Don't lecture me about coming from nothing," she flinched. "I didn't mean—" "You meant exactly what you said. You've built your entire persona around being self-made, and acknowledging my help would undermine that narrative. So you erased me instead. I was going to pay you back. I just wanted to wait until I could do it all at once, make it dramatic, you know? Show you how successful I'd become. You wanted to make my repayment about your generosity rather than your obligation." Amanda's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something harder underneath. "Why do you care so much? You have plenty of money. This is pocket change to you. It's $67,000. That's not pocket change to anyone. But more than that, it's the principle. You built your success on my foundation and then painted me as the villain when I asked for acknowledgement. I never called you a villain. You called me controlling, difficult, toxic. You posted on social media about elder abuse. You tried to turn my own son against me. I was protecting my business." From what? From paying legitimate debts? From basic honesty? We sat in silence for a moment. Finally, Amanda spoke, her voice small. "I was afraid if I admitted I needed help, people would think I was a fraud. So instead, you committed actual fraud." She looked up sharply. "That's not—" "Amanda, you represented my property as yours to build your business credit. You used my resources without compensation. You manipulated financial records to hide income from your husband. However you want to frame it, those are fraudulent acts. Are you going to press charges?" I'd been asking myself that question for weeks. "That depends. Are you going to take responsibility?" The settlement took 2 months to negotiate. Amanda would repay all debts in full, including back rent and interest. She would return all property, including the jewelry and formal acknowledgement that she'd never owned the car. She would vacate the boutique property at the end of her lease. In exchange, I wouldn't press charges or pursue additional damages. Thomas's divorce proceedings were separate, but connected. Once Amanda realized I wasn't backing down, she became more reasonable about the asset division, probably afraid that refusing would make me reconsider the criminal charges. My son moved into his own apartment, smaller than the house they'd shared, but entirely his. When I visited for the first time, I found him cooking dinner, something Amanda had never liked him to do because cooking smells bothered her. Sometimes, freedom smells like garlic and olive oil in a quiet kitchen. "This is nice," I said, watching him chop vegetables with the careful precision he brought to everything. "It is, isn't it?" He smiled, and it was the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in years. "Mom, I'm sorry for everything. For not believing you sooner. For letting her treat you that way. You were in a difficult position. I was in a position I put myself in. I saw who she was becoming, and I told myself I could fix it with patience and understanding. I didn't realize I was just enabling her. You were trying to save your marriage. That's not shameful." "No, but staying in it would have been." Amanda paid me back in installments over 8 months. The full amount with interest. She moved her second boutique to a different location and posted about new beginnings and finding your authentic path. She never acknowledged what had happened, never admitted wrongdoing publicly. Her social media continued to present her as the victim of family drama who'd risen above it. But her follower count started dropping. People were tired of the constant victim narrative. Former employees and mutual acquaintances were whispering the truth. The shine had come off her carefully curated image. Thomas started dating someone new, a teacher named Grace who thought his kindness was attractive rather than exploitable. When he brought her to meet me, I watched them interact with cautious hope. She asked him questions and listened to his answers. She laughed at his jokes. She treated him like a full person, not a supporting character. "I like her," I told him when Grace went to the restroom. "So do I." He smiled. "She doesn't have social media. Says she prefers living her life to performing it. Smart woman." On the 1-year anniversary of that first demand letter, I did something frivolous. I took the money Amanda had finally repaid and booked a trip to Scotland. Something Martin and I had always planned, but never done. I posted exactly one photo on my small social media account. Me, standing in front of Edinburgh Castle, wearing my mother's diamond earrings, genuinely smiling. The caption read, "Some investments pay better returns than others. At 74, I've learned to invest in peace, not performance." "Best decision I ever made," Thomas commented. "Proud of you, Mom. Enjoy every second," Grace added. "Can't wait to hear all about it. Save stories for our dinner next week." Amanda didn't comment. But late that night, she sent a text. "I hope you're happy now." I looked at those 5 words for a long time, thinking about all the ways to respond. Finally, I wrote back, "I am. I hope someday you can be too." I meant it. Despite everything, I hoped Amanda would find happiness that didn't require diminishing other people. I hoped she'd build success that didn't depend on erasing those who helped her. I hoped she'd discover that authenticity was more fulfilling than performance. But that was her journey. Mine was finally my own again. The final chapter came 6 months later when Thomas and Grace got engaged. It was a small celebration, just close family and friends. Amanda, notably, wasn't invited to any pre-wedding events, though Thomas said she could attend the ceremony if she wished. She didn't wish. At the engagement dinner, Thomas stood up to make a toast. "I want to thank everyone here for supporting Grace and me, especially Mom, who taught me the most important lesson of my life this past year." He looked at me, his eyes suspiciously bright. "You taught me that love without respect isn't love at all. That generosity without acknowledgement is exploitation, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone else's harmful behavior." He raised his glass. "To healthy relationships built on honesty and to never being afraid to ask for what you're owed." Everyone drank, and I felt something settle in my chest. Not satisfaction exactly, but something quieter and more durable. Peace. Later, as people were leaving, Grace pulled me aside. "Thank you for raising a man who understands accountability. Thomas told me everything that happened. I can't imagine how hard it was to stand up to your daughter-in-law." "It was the hardest thing I've ever done," I admitted, "but not as hard as watching my son lose himself in a marriage that demanded he shrink. He's growing again now. I can see it happening. So can I. And Grace, thank you for seeing him. Really seeing him." She squeezed my hand. "Thank you for making sure there was still enough of him left to see." Today, I'm 75 years old. I live comfortably in my retirement community, visit Thomas and Grace regularly, and spend my time doing exactly what I want. I travel occasionally, volunteer at the local library, and teach a financial literacy class for other seniors. The class is popular, especially with women my age who've spent lifetimes managing family relationships by being financially accommodating. I teach them about documentation, about the difference between gifts and loans, about how to set boundaries without guilt. I tell them my story, and they tell me theirs. Stories of children who borrowed and never repaid, grandchildren who expected unlimited funding, family members who exploited generosity and called it love. We're a generation of women who were taught that sacrifice was virtue and boundaries were selfishness. We're unlearning those lessons together, one documented loan at a time. Sometimes, late at night, I think about Amanda. I wonder if she ever thinks about what she could have had: a supportive mother-in-law, a faithful husband, a legitimate business built on honest success. If she ever regrets choosing performance over authenticity. But mostly, I don't think about her at all. I think about the life I'm building in my 70s, unencumbered by people who only valued my checkbook. I think about the relationships I've kept that are built on mutual respect. I think about my son, finally happy in a marriage between equals. And I think about the lesson I learned too late, but not too late to matter. Being generous doesn't mean being silent. Family loyalty shouldn't require self-erasure, and asking for what you're owed isn't selfish. It's honest. At 75, I'm done making myself smaller to make other people more comfortable. I'm done pretending debts are gifts to preserve peace. I'm done being erased from stories I helped write. From now on, I'm the author of my own narrative. And darling, it's a story worth reading. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to an old woman's story. We're often told our time for speaking up has passed, that we should be grateful for whatever scraps of respect we're offered, that family harmony matters more than personal dignity. But I'm here to tell you, document everything, trust your instincts, and never let anyone convince you that asking for what you're owed makes you difficult. It makes you honest. And honesty, I've learned, is the most radical act a woman my age can perform. We raised our children to be strong. Now it's time to show them what strength really looks like. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.